Well, we have Luana Rubin with us this season on Quilting Nerds. Welcome.
Thank you.
And you've been with us in the past.
Yes.
But today we're going to talk about how, quilters are very generous. Quilters by nature are just givers.
They are. It's incredible.
It's not just about making the quilt, but it's giving the quilt, it's gifting the quilt, it's finding an organization that may need it, so there's an element of philanthropy in quilting.
That's right. That's why I left the garment industry and came into this industry, because quilters have such big hearts.
They certainly do. Mm-hmm. So tell us about your experience with philanthropy and donating and gifting and giving and that kind of thing.
Well, I just found that when I put out a call for help, that quilters respond. Mm-hmm. And one of the ones that you're familiar with is when we had those big fires in Colorado.
Yes, I was living in Boulder at the time.
That's right, and my mother lived right next to you. Mm-hmm. And we were all really concerned about that, and we put a call out and we got several hundred quilts for the people who had lost their homes, and some of them lost their homes and everything in it, just like that. So there was one story in particular that I loved. There was a man who I gave a quilt to. He and his wife were at the relief center when I came in with all these quilts, and he was a firefighter, and his home was burnt down while he was saving other people's homes. And I let him have first pick, and they were just incredulous that quilters could be so generous to just give a quilt to a stranger they'd never met.
Wow, that's amazing. And so tell us about the efforts for Guatemala.
Yes, well, I'm also involved with a group that goes down to do cleft palate and cleft lip surgery. In fact, I went down on a surgery trip in December, and we took several hundred quilts down, and we gave a quilt to every one of the children who was waiting for surgery. And that was quite an amazing trip. And all those quilts came from a group in Ohio.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing! So in Ohio, and so tell us about this, the Rwanda relief efforts that you've been a part of.
Yes, and that is quite an amazing partnership. We're working with Engineers Without Borders, both the CU Boulder chapter and the NASA Johnson Space Center chapter. And so we have basically a bunch of rocket scientists, a bunch of quilters, and going to Rwanda to help to build an orphanage and also to build a school. And this quilt I brought along, this was actually a gift from the students at the school, and they're learning how to make quilts out of the traditional African fabrics, and they made a quilt for me and sent it back to me.
That is so, how sweet. So
it really is.
What you give somehow comes back twofold.
Well, and it's a great gift because I can share this with others as a story, and that will inspire them to do more. It doesn't have to be perfect.
No, it doesn't. Just has to have a little love in it.
That's right.
So tell us about the Hurricane Sandy relief efforts.
Yes, well, of course, when 30,000 people lost their homes in the Northeast, we put out a call again, and we received a couple thousand quilts for that, and they have been distributed through one of the fabric companies has been using their warehouse as kind of a landing and distribution point. And I think that will continue for quite some time because, as with Katrina, and we did some work with Katrina, and after the Haiti earthquake, collecting and shipping quilts down there, there are still so many people who are going to be without homes and without possessions. I
would imagine with the push of social media that it's actually much easier to get people to donate quilts, to just spread the word that these efforts exist.
That is so true. I mean, I put out a call on Facebook and I get a phenomenal response. And often people will contact me and say, I want to do something. Do you have any ideas of how we can help?
Right, okay. And then next was the tsunami in Japan.
That was an amazing thing. We worked with the group here in Ohio, Mission of Love, who does work all over the world, and that's who I went to Guatemala with. And they helped us to ship over 2,000 quilts to Japan. So in July of 2011, just a few months after the tsunami, we had a C-5 airplane take all these quilts over, and that's a huge amount of quilts.
Right,
and that takes up
2,000. Well, that's a lot of quilts to amass in just 2 months' time after
Yes, and to process that, to receive the quilts, open up the boxes and everything. And actually, there were T-shirts and tote bags from Quilt Festival that were donated that were sent with those quilts as well.
Oh, well, that's good. Good as well as some quilts. Well, tell me a little bit more about why you feel so passionate about this, about donating and that kind of thing. I mean, it seems it's not just one cause that you're supporting. It seems to be many causes.
It is. I just think it's such a natural thing. I guess you could say that I've taken the lead on a lot of these projects because people do come to me and they say, what can I do? I really want to make a difference. I have no idea what to do. So I put on my thinking cap and I make a few phone calls and say, okay, this person can collect them, this person can ship them, here's a distribution point. I think really finding a trusted distribution point is really key, especially with Hurricane Sandy.
Right.
We want to make sure it gets right to the people who really need it. And, you know, all this starts on such a grassroots level. Church groups, guilds, I mean, they're already making quilts. Sometimes when we put out a call for quilts after a disaster, they just come flooding in because they've been making these quilts all along.
Well, that brings me to my next about, you know, the tragedy that happens. So, for instance, you know, when something tragic happens, you know, quilters are always wanting to step up and alleviate the hurt and the pain and make people feel better. And do you have any recommendations for people who want to get involved into charitable quilting and donating?
Well, you know, working with a group that has that as their focus is a great way to do it because they're already set up. A lot of times a local quilt shop will donate scraps to a group like that. For instance, we do that. I have, you know, I keep my scrap boxes, and when they fill up, I give them away to groups. So you can look in your stash and see if you have any fabrics that either you'd like to donate to a group like this or that you might want to put into a donated quilt that you make yourself.
Well, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out this quilt. This was made by a group of children for the Sandy Hook elementary families. And there's a lot of heart that went into this. It's very sweet.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us, Luana. And we will have more information on our website for charitable donations, and I will be right back.